expense that I'm going to need to cover. And if I think that Social Security is going to kick in at $1,800 a month at the time I want to retire, what does that leave there? $3,200 in deficit. Most of your teacher retirement plans at 30 years are kicking out what amount per month? About $3,000. Leaving a deficit of $200 a month. Okay, that's month one. Is this figure gross before taxes or net after taxes?
Gross.
Is it?
Probably.
Is this a reasonable number? In today's world, can most of your retirees retire on $5,000? So just from a methodology standpoint, if I knew that I had a $200 retirement gap per month, I could multiply that by 12 and know that I am short $2,400 a year. Correct? I could then, if I wanted to, divide this by 0.04 because we know that the old rule of thumb, and research has been updated since, but the old rule of thumb is if you don't take more than 4% out of your portfolio, you probably won't exhaust your portfolio over a 30-year period. Okay, that's what the probability says. Can anybody divide that for me? 2,400 divided by 4%? Who's got a calculator?
6,000?
What's that?
60,000.
60,000. So hypothetically, if I had a $60,000 asset set aside, I could withdraw $2,400 a year, particularly with the assets earning at least 4%, and I could be okay. I could bridge my income gap. Is that correct? This is very simple methodology, and it doesn't yet account for inflation or anything else, but guess what? I've just determined that in this case, I need to have at least $60,000 accumulated outside Social Security and state retirement in a 403B or otherwise in order for this hypothetical client to meet their goals.
Maybe just do like an interest distribution off of it, along with their Social Security and everything.
But here becomes the challenge. The challenge is if I'm going to take, here's the problem with retirement planning. If I'm going to take 4% off the asset for the $2,400, and if inflation really is about 3.65% a year, 4 plus 3.65 tells me that I've got to be earning at least 7.65 on the asset in order for that $60,000 to protect both its principal and its purchasing power. Now, if I know that's true,
pension plan is probably fixed too. Most of the pension plans are fixed like that.
what's that?
I think most of the pension plans here in West Virginia, they're fixed. They don't get a cost.
They don't get a cost of living, do they? Okay.
You guys don't get
Now-
rider.
Understand, out in Utah, there is a cost of living increase of up to 4%, but it isn't guaranteed. If the current teachers are getting raises, then retirees probably are getting raises too, but we don't expect it'll max out at 4 consistently, and we don't expect it'll even keep up with baseline inflation. Okay? And here, I'm only giving you a sense for what the asset would have to perform at just to keep this gap amount in income happening properly. I'm not accounting, as you said, for any inflation here or here, in terms of what those amounts need to do.
Okay. Is that, I know this is just a simple run through you can do quickly with the client, just
Yeah.
gonna give them a baseline number, but I mean, that's not even looking at taxes that are taken out.
No,
You're saying 5,000 expenses, we're only getting 3,000 from STRS, but really that's before tax. That's a bigger deficit than we're looking at.
okay, so let's create a more reasonable deficit. How do you wanna, how much on top of 5,000 in expenses do you wanna put in required income for tax purposes? Most people in a 15?
Yeah. Unless they miss it really well.
I don't know, I know, we got a flat tax out in Utah on a state level, so that's an extra 5. So if I think I'm in a federal 15 out there, I'd probably estimate 20%. What do you want to estimate in West Virginia? Same? Okay. So if I say 20% on top of that for taxes, what's my real figure? 6,000? Is that correct? Which means I'm really 1,200 short down here. Correct? If I'm really 1,200 short down here times 12, that's 14,400, or what is it?
Right.
Is that right? So 14,400 divided by 0.04 says I better have an asset of what?
360,000.
360,000 set aside. Now we're getting somewhere. With just a little teeny tiny simple analysis like this, we can sit down and say, wow, we got to have $360,000 minimally accumulated before we can even pretend to think about retiring. What is, if you look back at our financial calculator variables, if 360 becomes our future value, the thing we need to accumulate, and it's assuming that we haven't started accumulating anything, we're starting at 0, the present value would be 0. How long do we have to accumulate for the average educator if we're starting at 0 with a young educator? 30 years? So here becomes my question. Where's my calculator? Okay, given our parameters here, and clear the registry out. 360,000. Oh, but guess what we didn't do? We got 30 years to accumulate. We haven't adjusted this $360,000 figure for inflation. Well, that just gets too complicated. We'll get there though, okay? 360,000 is our future value. We're starting at 0. We have 30 years. And I'm going to go back to an 8% rate of return, just by default. Can anybody tell me how much we need to be putting away per month in order to reach a non-inflation adjusted goal? $241.55. No, this is not inflation adjusted yet. Okay? That's a flat number. It is not inflation adjusted.
$1.18 million, with $324 for 30 years. Right?
Well, 360 times 3 roughly. I mean, it'll be a little different, but yeah. Didn't I say a little while ago that in order to maintain lifestyle properly, we needed to have $1 million outside the retirement system accumulated? Look too far off. Here's the question. We have just given ourselves some methodology here to understand, even without inflation adjusting it at this point, if you sat down with every one of your educators even without being worried about inflation, because you have to be, but you don't need to be for our purposes for a minute. If you're not gonna be concerned about inflation and the rising cost of goods and services, and you simply want to sit down and say, we gotta accumulate $360,000, we're at zero today. Let's see what it would take. Oh, $241 at 8% to get there. Would that be at least a fair and a reasonable start? What if they say, I can't do 241, I can't afford to put 241 a month away?
Make some compromises.
Then, hey, I'm okay with that. What can you afford? What's that?
Where's your pen?
Yeah, where's my pen? Turn it around. How much of this retirement lifestyle did you want to shave off, right? No, that's exactly right. But let's say I can't do 241. I can only afford to put away 150. Okay, $150 gets me, instead of the 360,000, 223,000 given our assumptions. That gets us 223 to 360. That's a great place to start, but we're gonna have to catch up in later years.
What calculator are you using?
HB 12C. HB 12C. Yep, $223,000 along the way to our 360, and we haven't even adjusted for inflation yet. So here becomes my question: is that a good place to get started? And would I document in my file that the real need was $360,000 from a future value perspective? At $150 a month, given an 8% return, we think and estimate we can get 223 of the needed 360,000 accumulated. What does that then give you the ability to do when you go back for your reviews on an annual basis? Recalculate and increase it.
What was, sorry, I was trying to punch my calculator, what was the payment they said they could afford comfortably
150.
for 30 years
Yeah.
at 8%?
So let me ask everybody a quick question. Let's go back to what he said at the beginning, okay? So how do I look if I'm the typical agent coming into school that suggests as a new teacher you start at $30 a month because that's what everybody else does, because it's really the lowest payment that we take? Because you know there's going to be a gap, so let's start you at $30 a month. At least that'll get you started. How do I look compared to what he just went through with me?
I'm just trying to sell on that contract.
Like, I'm trying to sell him something, and to be honest with you, I really probably don't know very much compared to what he went through, right? And all he really did was take the time to ask me questions about what's important to me, right?
It's not rocket science, right?
No.
There's
He
nothing.
didn't show them formulas, he didn't show them, graphs and charts and books and, oh my goodness, based on what somebody said, this is what you gotta be doing. He just asked them simple questions about, where do you want to be, right? What do you want? What do you want the numbers to be?
Give me your number. How much are you going to need to cover expenses in month one of retirement? What are your sources of income estimated to look like? That leaves a gap of this amount. Multiply it by 12, divide it by 0.04. Here's in a non-inflation adjusted sense what we need to accumulate. Now, when they call you and they say, but we've just had something go wrong and we've got to stop our contributions for now, right? Does that happen? Never. Well, we got to stop our contributions for a little while. Hey, no problem. We can help with that. When are we going to get them started again? Because remember, we had to accumulate $360,000 to retire, and we got to keep after that. Here is the great big key to retirement planning. It's got to have some real parameters around it. A methodology, even as simple as this methodology's been, it's got to have some methodology and some real specific numbers. And then how many of you have been asked the questions from time to time, well, how's your stuff performing? Well, here's what my thing here's what my thing over at wherever it is performs, or this is what my quarterly statement looks like. Can you beat this? Anybody ever ask you about performance on the investments?
Oh, yeah.
Just like they do with the price on the PNC? Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Okay? Here is the really, really, really critical thing. If you know how to use a financial calculator, you can actually, by solving for I, the rate of return, you can actually do something pretty profound in the process, and that is, I'd be happy to discuss that with you as far as our performance question is concerned. I'd be happy to discuss that with you. But first, answer this question for me. What rate of